We are closing the important day of discussions and negotiations. I believe it was a very useful meeting of the Security Council, which was important at this juncture when the events in the Middle East and North Africa are evolving. I'm sure we haven't seen the end of it, and it is important for the international community from time to time get together and see what we can do to make sure that these processes are going naturally on the basis of the will of the people of the countries of the region, without outside interference, without imposing any prejudged solutions to a situation in one country or another. Of course, mostly people were concerned with the situation in Syria. I would add, and around Syria. The situation certainly requires some engagement on the part of the international community, and today's debate on the Security Council and the meetings which I had later with the Secretary General, with the Secretary of State, with William Hague and Guido Westerwelle and other colleagues indicated that there is a growing understanding of the need not to talk to each other on the basis of take it or leave it, but to bring the positions together and to be guided not by the desire of revenge, of punishment, who is to blame, and so on and so forth, but by the basic interests of the Syrian people. And this requires immediate end of violence as the number one priority. And for this, we shall not really think of putting the government and the opposition on one level, whether it's acceptable or not. It's about saving lives. Ceasefire is an absolute must. And we sincerely hope that the mission headed by Kofi Annan would succeed in developing some ideas which would make it possible for us to agree on how to stop the bloodshed immediately, how to stop the fighting irrespective of the source of the violence.
Mr. Foreign Minister, now...
I'm late for the British lunch.
Sure. The Security Council inaction has created a lot of frustration in the region. Some countries are even openly saying that they would support the opposition and give weapons to Syrian opposition. How much longer...
Well, there are reports that some countries are not only talking about it.
Right, but how much longer will Security Council inaction continue, and how much do you think this will contribute to those countries' attitude?
Well, as far as we are concerned, we believe this could be done very quickly. I will remind you that it was on the Russian initiative that as early as August last year, the Security Council adopted a statement where all the principles of resolving this crisis were set forth, including the importance to support the Syrians themselves, to encourage the Syrian-led inclusive dialogue, to exclude any outside interference, and so on and so forth. Then, in September, we developed a draft resolution, which some of our partners believed was not to their liking. Then, immediately after the Arab League adopted its decision on the 2nd of November, we made another try and developed another resolution based on the principles embodied in the November 2nd plan, including the beginning of national dialogue between the government and all groups of the opposition without any preconditions, including non-interference, including humanitarian aspects. This resolution, after several weeks of discussions, was considered by some member states not adequate. So we are not idle on this one. We believe that the Security Council can and should get its act together, but for this you cannot really expect one point of view to prevail. For the decisions of the Security Council to be sustainable and implementable, they must be based on the core principles of the Charter. And the veto is not something artificial. The founding fathers of the United Nations, in their wisdom, decided on the basis of unfortunate experience of the League of Nations, that unless the permanent members of the Security Council agree on something, decisions of the Security Council could not be sustainable. So let's try to be respectful to each other, respectful to each other's position, and let's find common approaches, but approaches which would be formulated in a very clear terms and which would exclude a repetition of the situation with the Libyan resolutions, both of which were grossly violated in spite of the fact that the first one was consensus, and the decisions which would not be ambiguous.
Did you speak to the Secretary General about that? When you met with the Secretary General, did you speak about this request that he work with NATO under the MOU to look into the casualties in Libya? And also, what do you mean by impartial monitoring mechanism on Syria? What would that consist of?
Yes, I did speak to the Secretary General. I recalled what I said in the Security Council meeting. And as far as impartial monitoring mechanism is concerned, I think it's up to all of us to put our minds together and to see what specific scheme could be worked out. Again, we count very much on Kofi Annan's mission. He met in Damascus with President of Syria. He met with several opposition leaders. He is traveling in the region, and he will be reporting to the Secretary General and through him to all of us, I hope soon. One for the ladies. One for the ladies.
Do you think that your presence here with the other foreign ministers in your bilaterals or general discussions, did things move forward so that you can really reach an understanding? Because you are really far apart. From listening to you and listening to them, you say, well, this is what we gave you in December, and they say, well, we have red lines. We're not going to accept the equivalence. We're not going to accept your definition of the political transition. Kindly tell me if this exercise has helped, and how do you propose to get over your
Ragida, you didn't listen to my introductory remarks. I gave my assessment of the usefulness of this meeting in my first sentences. As to the question how we can bridge the differences, ultimatums would not work. That's the only thing I can say.
Mr. Parnas. Greetings, Mr. Parnas. There are many experts in the world who believe that the killing on the part of the Syrian government is not going to stop until Russia tells it to or put pressure on it. And that regardless of whether it's interference in affairs, a massacre is a massacre. Are you putting pressure on the Syrian government?
We are in regular contact with the Syrian government. It was on our very strong advice that they accepted the Arab League November 2nd plan. It was on our very strong advice and insistence that they accepted the observer mission of the Arab League, only to see that as this mission started working and producing some reports, the Arab League aborted its own invention, and I believe it was a mistake. I discussed it with my Arab friends in Cairo the day before yesterday. It is not honest when people say that everything depends on Russia. I would love to see such a situation for the Russian Federation in the world affairs, and I would also like, to hope that the United States can magically resolve the Middle East crisis, the Arab-Israeli conflict, or stop drug trafficking from Afghanistan. But we all understand that today's problems of the world cannot be resolved by the desire or efforts, even insistence, even action by one country alone. So the people who are fighting in Syria against the government, among them you have this Free Syrian Army. There are reports that some groups of Al-Qaeda are there, and they do have arms in their hands. So if the task is to say that Assad is responsible for everything, therefore he must just vacate the cities, maybe it's something which catches the eye of the people who watch TV. But if the Security Council is not about creating such public opinion, but is about stopping the bloodshed then we must be a bit more pragmatic. Justice might wait, because the more we insist on, the government must do something and then everything would fall into pieces, the more people get killed. Thank you very much.
Gaza.